Hey everyone, so today I want to discuss microbrands and why I think that they are most likely the future of watchmaking. Let's get into it. So before we get too far into the conversation, let me just lay out what I think a microbrand is. So for me, a microbrand is a small to medium company which isn't part of a larger group or isn't an independent watchmaker. And what I mean by that is that they don't make any components or movements in-house. So what they do is they typically source movements, cases, dials, and handsets from different manufacturers, bring them into one location, put them together. Now sometimes this is in the same country that they're making the watches in, and other times it's in China or in Asia, and then it's sent to the company for distribution to its customers. Microbrands also tend to crowdfund their endeavors, so they tend to do pre-orders and pre-order windows to raise capital in order to pay for the production of the watches. So let's take a look at micro brands in the watch industry and their correlation to the past. So watchmaking and watch companies are steeped in history. And the only difference between watch companies today, like Rolex and Panerai, in comparison to microbrands today, is time. So when they first formed, Panerai and Rolex were both microbrands. Rolex, Hans Wilsdorf set up Rolex to get components from different manufacturers, case them up, brand them as Rolex, and then sell them. Hans Wilsdorf was a bit of a marketing genius, and he was able to use the media at the time to push Rolex into the mainstream. So he used print ads in magazines and papers of the time, and took out adverts on billboards to place Rolex in front of people so that the brand was become well known throughout the world. Fast forward to today, and companies like Studio Underdog, Fears, Zelos, all do the same thing, but the media which they use is slightly different, where their brands get in front of their customers much, much easier. And because of that, I think these brands are the future of watchmaking. I think traditional watch brands have, over the last number of years, gotten very complacent. There has been, since COVID, an uptake in luxury watch purchases. However, that has taken a sharp decline in the last year, 18 months. And so I think more established brands are very conservative in what they produce today based on their heritage and their history. And it's in the micro brand sphere, you see that there's much more innovation and much more fun watches being produced. What I think gets forgotten a lot in watch collecting and in the watch industry is that the watch industry was at the forefront of technological innovation for many, many years, with the invention of the keyless works, the automatic rotors, the tourbillon, chronographs, split seconds, all of these functions which were done mechanically at a time where you couldn't do these things was a marvel in those time periods. Then came quartz, which revolutionized the watch industry yet again, giving much more accurate, inexpensive movement to go into watches for the masses. And then if you come closer to now, in the last 10-15 years, we have smartwatches. And if you compare smartwatches and quartz watches and mechanical watches, what you realize very quickly is that the smartwatch, without a lot of the smart functions, but the smartwatch itself is the pinnacle of modern watchmaking. It's way more accurate. It's a tool which in a normal watch you can have a selection of maybe one or two tools on a watch, unless you go for a quartz watch. But in mechanical, if you want a chronograph, it's typically just a chronograph, maybe with a date. On a smartwatch, you have all these functions built as standard into these watches, and they are much more accurate, much more reliable. Where I think traditional watchmakers are stuck in the past a little bit is that innovation is very, very limited in traditional watchmaking. So if you look at brands like IWC, Omega, Panerai, Blancpain, Longines, all of these brands have fantastic heritage, but they very rarely come with something new to the market that is innovative and interesting. And if they do, it's typically at a price point that is very difficult to see a value in. I think microbrands offer the complete opposite. So you can buy a Baltic watch for 600 euros. The finish on that watch is pretty good. You've got Breguet numerals, you've got a micro rotor movement inside that watch, and it's finished to a very high standard for a 600 euro watch. The equivalent watch in Longines or in Tag Heuer or in any other of those kind of mid-tier brands, you're looking at 2,000 to 3,000 euros for a similarly spec'd watch. I think the watch industry forgets its history a little bit sometimes also. After the quartz crisis in the 70s, there was a number of brands that just fell into obscurity and actually ceased to exist today. And there are some brands that went out of fashion and have come back into fashion again because they've been taken over and given a rebirth in the last number of years. So I think that, in my opinion, the next 5 or 10 years we'll see a shift in focus, because I think high horology is a different level, a different thing. And I think that nowadays people want more value, because watches and watch collecting is a luxury hobby. You no longer need a watch when your phone can do everything that you need it to do when it comes to telling time, and more accurately. So in my opinion, I think that in the next 4 or 5 years, a lot of the smaller micro brands will transition into becoming independent watchmakers, bringing some of that in-house capabilities into their companies and growing into established brands, and in a number of years will have a better grip on the market than some of these more established traditional brands. And the younger generation comes through, I think they have a different view on what luxury and value are. And so I worry that these traditional brands will be left behind because they're not really creating watches or watch brands that young people want to buy into. So there you go, guys. That's why I think in the future, a lot of these micro brands will become a lot more mainstream and also become more established companies. Or do you think that these micro brands will fall into obscurity in a number of years and that we'll still be left with the traditional watch brands? So maybe let me know in the comments below. If you like the style of this video, maybe consider giving a subscription to the channel, hit that thumbs up, and we'll see you guys in the next one.